Welcome to the week 4 go-to session, final one of the month. So yay, we can see the finish line in sight. As I mentioned before I started the recording, this is going to be a shorter session, so that's a reason to celebrate as well, because I really only have some final reminders to go on. I've already started grading drafts, so today and tomorrow, that's what I'm going to be working on. Okay, but mostly I want to talk about peer review, which is already started, and then some final tips for your final presentation. Okay, so let's begin. Uh, Actually, let me get away from this for a second. Before I get into the tips, why don't I remind people what we're doing? Okay, so here we are, week 4. Um, okay, good. It looks like 13 people put their drafts on the board. Make sure. I'm assuming everybody here has probably done that already because people who tend to go to sessions, I assume, not that people don't attend. Sometimes there are conflicts, okay? Not everybody can attend this session live. But yeah, the people who show up, I assume, are keeping up with things. So Adrian's posted his presentation, and it looks like people already jumped in. Okay, so yeah, everybody needs to make sure that their presentation is on the peer review board, and then your job is to respond to at least 3 classmates. Please give attention to people who have not received feedback yet. A frustrating thing happens where whoever's up top, and it keeps changing with every time someone posts, that person gets like a million responses, but then you scroll all the way down and some people haven't received any. So yeah, it looks like everybody's already getting some feedback, but okay, just make sure that everybody's getting some attention. Okay. um, and I haven't looked at these yet. I mean, sometimes people are just making quick comments, but yeah, your job is to respond somewhat in depth. So in depth to me means like at least, I don't know, a medium-ish paragraph, or I mean, it shouldn't just be 1 or 2 lines. Looks good, or and actually, maybe that's a good introduction to my 3 tips. Question in the chat, Maxwell saying, is it as simple as dragging it into the chat box? You have options. Let me scroll all the way up. Okay, so let's say I'm posting something, blah, 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 right? You have this little folder here. This is your media upload folder. And if it's like an actual document, so either Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, yes, you can just drag the file and drop it in here. If you have a third-party media site, so like a YouTube address or something, you can just put it here and it will embed directly into the presentation. Okay. And other people can chime in because I see Adrian and others have their thing uploaded. Did you guys use YouTube? Or, I mean, I'm assuming that anything, as you can see, YouTube, Vimeo, Vimeo is like YouTube, SoundCloud. Okay, so just about any working link. If your project is somewhere online that's viewable, you can drag in that address and it will embed right into the peer review board. I mean, that's what's most useful because then you can just click and sit back and watch. But yeah, it's not a problem. If people have a PowerPoint, they might have to, drag it in there and people have to click on it and open it up. There are programs that allow you to transfer your PowerPoint slides into an online format that can then be shared, but that's not a big deal. Okay, I'm sure that people can do that extra step of clicking on the PowerPoint document and opening it up. Okay. Daniel says, PowerPoint, I feel so pedestrian for using it. Yeah, don't be. Actually, let me point out something else too, because I just posted this maybe an hour ago. It's under this week's discussion area, and I know the discussion is supposed to be about the textbooks, but because I'm not sure how many people are still going back to last week's first draft community board, I put it here because I assume maybe people aren't going back to last week's board, but they might go to this week's board. And yeah, I mean, by the way, Daniel, PowerPoint is fine. But just make sure that you're following course concepts. And I've already seen a couple drafts. They're sort of looking like old school PowerPoints. And because I wrote similar feedback to both these people, I decided to share the general comments with everyone. So what I did is I made a quick slide. Okay. And as I say in my message here, yeah, I did this in like 2 seconds. The font I would play with. I actually like this font style, but it's not bright enough. It's not standing out as much as I would like, even though I do like the font quite a bit. It's bolded, believe it or not, so I'm trying to make it stand out, both in terms of color. And so I would have to search a little bit more to find a font that is similar to this, that I like, that actually leaps off the page a little bit more. But yeah, I created this in 2 seconds. But this was done using PowerPoint. Okay. Um, I understand that the drafts for this week are drafts, but I do get a little bit concerned when the presentations aren't kind of following what we've been learning all month. I mean, several times during the lectures, I've even showcased certain slides, right? Where I said, look at this slide. This is what you're aiming for. Remember, there was one with an impact crater, right? You find the right image, you pair it with the right text, and boom, you've got a slide. Um, so yeah, I saw a couple cases where, sure, for a draft, it's fine. But yeah, I was a bit concerned because I didn't feel like it was following course concepts. It was looking too much like a generic background with text slapped on it. Or sure, there were images, but the images didn't seem to be placed with that much care. Um, and sometimes the photo credit was, huge and it stood out. Believe it or not, there's a photo credit here. It's right here. Okay. For people who really want to see it, you can see it, but look how it's barely visible. How many people noticed that there was a photo credit when you looked at this slide? Probably no one, right? That's what you're aiming for. Well, Daniel says he saw it, but Daniel, it probably wasn't distracting. When your eyes first looked at this, it didn't immediately go here. Or if it did, it's probably because for some reason this chat bubble popped in when it shouldn't have. Um, but yeah, you can do that. Make your photo credit small. Have it blend into the background. Don't make it completely invisible, but make sure that it's not the first thing that people see. So yeah, you should be. I'm pushing people to create your own slides. That's where the creativity comes in. Now, there's a danger because sometimes people almost follow course concepts too well, in that the presentation starts looking like a photo album, just an endless stream of images. So, yeah, that's something to be careful of too. But the creativity comes in. You find the right images, pair it with the right text, and they're not just decoration. Okay, this is the challenge. The visuals have to do work, right? They're working in tandem with your voiceover to communicate a message. So both elements are working together. So yeah, that's where the creativity and the challenge comes in. Finding the right visual, using the right words, so that while we're listening to your voiceover, what's appearing on the screen is aiding that. Okay, does this make sense? So, and I wrote a lot here too. Okay, so people want to read it can read through it. I also gave some tips on fonts. Okay, I won't read through this entirely during this session, but someone mentioned Times New Roman in the chat. That's what's called a serif font, and in general, you should be using sans serif font. Sans means without. Basically, it refers to fonts that don't have feet. Okay, the little, like, this is a sans serif font because the M here doesn't have little feet at the bottom, or the I doesn't have a little foot here and a little thingy here. Okay. Um, don't ask me why. It's more visually pleasing. Text seems to be more powerful when it's sans serif. And I give some other tips too. But basically, think about things like font. Just don't grab the first font or the font that's already pre-chosen for you when you open PowerPoint. Make decisions in terms of font size, font style, font color. Okay. Where was I? Okay. Yeah, so there's this, okay? My post on the board here and an example of kind of what we're aiming for. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. And you could see this one, I actually, I should go back and fix this because this one is kind of like a generic PowerPoint because I put it together so quickly. Actually, that'll be my project for next month. Revise this so that even this presentation is doing what I preach. Maxwell says there are some things I talk about in my rough draft that are hard to find images for. Yeah, I mean, if you want to share what one of those examples is, maybe. Sometimes it's challenging for people in animation because they're frustrated that everything's copyrighted. I can't put Mickey Mouse in there. I can't. Or film people, right? They would love to have images of screenshots from films. I think the solution is always just to find a workaround. There are images out there that are general enough, so even if you can't find, you can't use Mickey Mouse perhaps, but you can find general images that have to do with animation or music or your industry in general. Um, okay, so for peer review, let me go back there. Okay, everybody should put their draft on the board to be review. Some general tips. First of all, be positive. Okay, make sure that you point out what's working well. Um, this isn't a big danger. Most people know how to do this intuitively, but because we're not doing this face to face, because this is non-verbal communication, your words say everything. Yeah, you have to make sure that you're aware of what you say and how you say it. So yeah, be positive. Everybody has something that's working well. So in the case of the drafts that I've looked at, I've already seen some very, very good scripts. I've talked about that. Okay. Feedback number two. Let's see. Maxwell says when talk about D&D, the best you could find was some people dressed up as orcs. Yeah, Maxwell, make sure that you're using the full range of availability. So, I mean, I know that I showed AP Images and compfight.com, but there are other Creative Commons type sources out there. Okay. I think everybody knows that term, but I'm just going to go ahead and type it in the chat just to be safe. I mean, you can use whatever image you like as long as it comes from a place that has it says either on the website or on the photo itself that yes, it's allowable to be used in for commercial purposes or for educational purposes, right? It's meant to be shared. So I don't think you should have trouble finding something that maybe it isn't literally Dungeons and Dragons. I forget who's behind that whole company. Yeah, you might not be able to find direct imagery for that, but you can certainly find fantasy themed images or images of people playing a game or right. I mean, I think there's a way to do that. Right, Daniel says you could take some D&D art from Wizards of the Coast. All you got to do is give them credit. Yeah, but you got to be careful, right? I mean, if Maxwell isn't sure that he can use that imagery, he needs to be sure. Yeah, you have to be careful. Will Wizards of the Coast come descending upon Maxwell because he used their images? Probably not. Just like if you used a picture of, I don't know, Rihanna. But we're trying to teach something larger here, which is that you're all heading into industries where copyright respect is important. All of you, graphic design, music, animation, think about it. When you watch the news, pay attention. At the end, there's a whole list of credits. So when you watch ESPN, it will say like video courtesy of, I don't know, Fox Sports or uh, such and such courtesy of NBC, right? So yeah, you have to make sure that what you're using is allowable. Because I will be checking images, and I will expect photo credits to appear, so I can check. Feedback tip number two is to be specific. Okay, sometimes there's a temptation to be very general in peer review comments. Looking good, but some slides could look a little bit more powerful visually. Okay, which slides, and why currently are they not really very powerful? So be specific. Okay, pinpoint actual things. And by the way, in terms of being specific, also think back to everything that we've learned this month during the lectures, through the readings. Okay, we've been talking about presentations all month. So you should have quite a bit more knowledge than perhaps you believe. So use that knowledge, okay? On the other hand, sure, be positive, but also point out things, okay? You don't have to be harsh. You don't have to be mean. You should definitely check the way that you're saying things. But sure, if you see something that's off, be sure to let the person know. If you see something that looks not very visually pleasing, pinpoint it. Explain why it's not working. Or if you don't think that certain elements of the presentation are following course concepts, be sure to point it out. Or if there's some aspect of the script that seems lacking, your classmates need this help. Okay, and most of us have pretty thick skins, and peer review is pretty painless. Like it's pretty seldom that someone is maybe too direct or too harsh. Okay, so yeah, I don't think there's anything to fear, and we're trying to help one another, and we can't do that if we're not being specific, or if we're being too general, or if we're being too nice. Okay, yeah, nice is good, but too nice, where we don't mention anything, that's not terribly helpful. And finally, yeah, when you do offer criticism, be sure you use softeners and qualifiers. In other words, you probably don't notice it in my own feedback, but I always say things like, "Oh, I was a bit confused here," or I'm a little bit concerned, right? I'm always like adding extra words. That's a way to soften things, because when you say things directly, I'm confused. This makes no sense. That can come across harsh, because remember, in face-to-face communication, you have these other ways to communicate things: a smile, tone of voice. All that disappears when only the words are on the page. So be hyper aware of how you say things. Okay. Bethany says, good to know. I need to add the credits. Yes, make sure that you always have photo credits here. And here you can tell I actually made this presentation a long time ago, and all I needed here was the URL, not the whole HTML. And if I let's see, is my doggy picture still up? Oops, I didn't mean to open that. That's Safari. I'm in Chrome. Oh, okay, here, right? So Bethany, look, the photo credits there, right? You can see the word photo credit, and then there's just the URL, the actual web address for this particular photo. And if we go to it, we'll see that, yeah, it's allowable. It's some rights reserved. It was taken from compfight.com. Jay says, what if the URL is too long? Hopefully it's not that long, right? I mean, like, here's an example of, yeah, that's pretty long, right? But that's because I took the whole HTML. The URL is really just right here. But if you do have a URL that's incredibly long, I guess you could just try your best to make it blend in. Make it small and make it blend in. Okay. But yeah, Jade, I would say don't confuse the URL with a whole bunch of HTML. Although I'm aware that there are some URLs out there that are ridiculously large. Yeah, Maxwell says you can always increase the text box length and decrease the font size. Right. So does that make sense to people? So I actually go into this thing. Actually, let me do it in real time. Okay, so here's my photo credit. And actually my control panel is blocking, so let me move that out of the way. Maxwell's saying you could just stretch things out, right? And it automatically adjusts. What I really need to do, though, is go in here and just get rid of all this junk and just keep the URL, right? And yeah, make sure that you get rid of all this junk here. So it's calling it a spelling error. All I have to do is click ignore, and we're in business. Ignore all, blah, 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 blah. There we go. Okay. Where's my next slide? There we go. So, and if you go in, let's see if I highlight everything and go into color. This is on PowerPoint, so you can choose from different colors, or if you want to make things even darker or lighter, you can increase things, right? So now it's really going to stand out. Oh, actually, no, that made it a little bit more invisible. That's probably maybe a little bit too invisible, but no, actually, that would work. But I could make it smaller. Let's see how that looks in slideshow mode. I'll get on with the presentation, by the way. I know that people don't want to sit here and watch me playing with colors and stuff. But because it is important, make the photo credits small, have them blend into the background. Okay. Let's get into some reminders about the final presentation. So you're going to get feedback from me by tomorrow. You're going to get feedback from fellow classmates all week. And then, of course, this feedback is so that you can revise everything. Let's see. Adrian's hand is up. Adrian, did you click that by accident? You just asked a question in the chat, so maybe that was it. If you were using your own image, do you need to point that out? No. If you're using your own photo or something that you hand drew or something that you own or created, you don't have to give a credit. And I'll assume that it's from you. And if I'm not sure, I'll just ask a question. It becomes pretty clear. I mean, when students are conscientious about including photo credits and there's not one for an image, I assume that that's from the student. And again, I might ask. I'll only take points off if I get a sneaking suspicion that, okay, this doesn't look like it's yours, or maybe several photos, or all the photos have no credits. So, okay, Maxwell says he'll get rid of the final slides URLs. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. Reminders. Okay, and by the way, even though, yeah, this isn't the fanciest presentation, here I found a blank post-it note, and I chose a marker looking font. So Even things like that are design decisions. Remember the basics: 3 to 5 minute presentation. I actually think it's 3 to 4 minutes. Um, yeah, keep yourself in that time frame. If you're going over this time period, yeah, you need to edit. I once created a PSA, a public service announcement, for the English class that I teach here because they were working on an essay version of a public service announcement. Then they actually had to create an actual public service announcement. And my original draft was 5 minutes long. I was using iMovie. I edited it down to 3 minutes, and it was much, much better. Much better. But yeah, I had to ruthlessly go through and eliminate words and phrases and entire lines, getting rid of anything that just felt like it was inessential. But the 3 minute version was much better than the 5 minute version. Remember, your audiences aren't going to hang in there for much longer than 3 minutes. That's just a fact. I mean, yeah, the TED Talks are a little bit longer, but that's because they're professional presenters. They're usually stars in their fields. Um, the environment is much more engaging, much more interesting. But in general, how many times can you hang in there for, let's say, a YouTube video or some other sort of visual thing that you find online for longer than 3 minutes? Adrian says his is currently 4:45, but I can see several places where I can cut. Yeah, okay, good. And I mean, listen, if it's truly being hurt by those cuts, of course you should keep what you feel most proud of. But yeah, in general, it's going to be stronger when you get it closer to that 3 or 4 minute mark. Okay. And other people are saying that they're under the length. Yeah, that's going to happen too. And check back. I mean, listen to your voiceover. Okay. Maybe you're speaking too fast. That sometimes happens. So obviously the solution isn't to speak so slow that you turn a 2 minute presentation into 3 minutes. Um, and go back and read my feedback to all of your planning documents. Remember, I wrote like a mini essay, 4 to 5 paragraphs, to kind of summarize what we've been doing this month and what you're aiming for. So sometimes, yeah, there's room to discuss things like your views on the industry, or where you see yourself standing in the industry, or where you think the industry is heading. Obviously, don't comment on those things if you're not comfortable doing so, or don't have something interesting to say about it. But you have the ability to add just about anything you want. This is your 3 to 4 minute space to present who you are. Okay, that's your brand, your unified sense of who you are that comes across in everything that you do. So as long as it's on topic, as long as it's relevant to a potential employer, yeah, you can go for it. So yeah, most people shouldn't have any trouble reaching the 3 to 4 minute requirements. Bethany says she feels like hers is long, but doesn't need to cut anything. How do you have any idea how long your presentation currently is? Also, I mean, you may not know until you actually record it. Some people just have a feeling that it's long, but um, yeah, some people 3 to 4 minutes seems incredibly long. They don't know how they're going to fill up that space. For me, with the public service announcement, it was like, wow, I can't believe it was 5 minutes. Did I have that much material? So yeah, time will either seem excruciatingly slow, or the opposite, quite long. Bethany, yours is under 5 minutes. Daniel says the same thing. Again, if you love every second of it, sure, keep it, but give yourself the challenge to ruthlessly edit. Believe me, sometimes even just getting rid of words, filler phrases, padding. Take a look at every sentence and say, is this absolutely essential? Is it because actually, you know what? Our author talks about this, right? I believe it's in Resonate. Nancy Duarte. I forget what expression she uses. Someone help me out. It was like killing. Because I had a professor who had a similar saying. She called it killing angels, where you have these parts of your project that you absolutely love, that you hate seeing disappear, and it feels like you're. Oh, I remember. Nancy Duarte calls it murder your darlings, right? That's what Adrian said. Murdering your darlings. And even though murder is a little bit intensive a word, yeah, I get the idea she's trying to communicate, right? That you have this stuff and you love it, absolutely love it, and you don't want to lose it. But sometimes you do have to lose it because the final product is going to be much stronger for it. Trust me on that. Okay. My 3 minute version was much stronger than the 5 minute version, even if some of the stuff that was on the editing room floor I loved. Okay, you guys know this stuff, right? You're a recent Full Sail graduate. You're presenting yourself to a prospective employer. In terms of presentation tool, I think everybody's probably chosen one already. Make sure that you choose something that you're comfortable with. Common ones, of course, are PowerPoint and Keynote. Prezi is an online tool. I'm not that crazy about Prezi. I mean, it's a fantastic tool, but Prezi, it sometimes is difficult for students to create presentations that follow course concepts because Prezi is sort of so dynamic in its own that students find it becomes difficult to manipulate it and make it do what the course is teaching. There's screen recording software. Okay. So I'm kind of using that now through the GoTo training console, but there's other equipment that will just record whatever you do on screen. Film editing software, that's what I love to use. Things like iMovie. I mean, choose a presentation tool that you're comfortable with. But on the other hand, if you feel pretty comfortable that and confident that you know how to learn your way around software, yeah, sure. I mean, film editing software I think is a breeze. And if you pretty much are comfortable with software, I don't think it's that difficult to use, and it can produce pretty powerful results. Okay. Some key concepts to keep in mind. Remember, your presentation should have a sense of a beginning, middle, and end. So you should be making some sort of opening move. Maybe you tell a short story. Maybe you begin with a thoughtful question. Remember, we talked about all these techniques last week, and I also mentioned that they're awesome techniques when used well, but they're terrible techniques when they're just used generically. Remember last week I mentioned the woman who used a Tolstoy quote, and I was confident she had no idea who Leo Tolstoy was. So yeah, everything that you include, you have a variety of techniques you can use, but all those techniques should be coming from the power of your own thought. Okay, you should have a quotation in your mind that you've heard someone say, or you should have a thoughtful question that you're sincerely interested in asking the audience, not just asking a question because you learned in class that asking a question is a good move. But yeah, make sure that you have a beginning, middle, and end. So that means an opening move, the middle, which is the bulk of your presentation, and then some sort of closing move. That's a star moment, right? Something they'll always remember. So there should be some point in your presentation, hopefully, that you're particularly proud of, because it might be a specific slide. It might be a certain 10 or 15-minute segment of your presentation that you think is working so well that it will stand out to your audience. We've been talking about effective visuals all month. Okay, so we're creating visually first presentations. It's not that text is bad, but we're not just slapping the content of our presentations onto the slides. We're trying to limit text. And if we do need to use maybe a bit more text, we should be transforming it somehow visually. Okay, not just, and I realize that I'm breaking that rule here. There are bullet points, but notice here I'm using a Post-it note, right? I chose a font that imitates a marker, handwriting. Okay, so those are design decisions that sort of take away from just the genericism of slapping bullet lists on slides. Repeatable sound bites. I don't know how many people remember that, but that's basically you being so hyper aware of everything you do and say that even down to the quality of how you say it is memorable. And yeah, keep in mind design principles. Okay, I forget if it's chapter 5 or 6 in Slideology, but there's a whole chapter on things like layouts. Otherwise, I just tell people, most people have an intuitive sense to tell when things look nice. So make things look nice. Okay. And if you need help, yeah, Slideology has that chapter. Script. Everybody should be creating a script. Okay. Nobody should be winging it. Because when you wing it, that's where people stumble. That's where people and ah. That's when people sometimes even cough. Okay. Yeah, you should be working from a script. Okay. Ideally, record your script in chunks. On PowerPoint, you can even record slide by slide. If you're familiar with software, there are plenty of audio tools that allow you to fix what you screw up right there, so you don't have to record everything over. But yeah, if you're old school and you're not sure how to do that, recording in chunks is much better. That way you don't feel the pressure of having to get through all 3 minutes without slipping up. Okay? That PSA that I made using iMovie, yeah, I wasn't that comfortable at the time editing. But that was okay because I think I had maybe 6 short paragraphs, and I just recorded it 1 paragraph at a time. And then I'd listen back. And that's kind of bullet point number 2 here. Make sure that your voiceover is polished and professional. So listen back to what you've recorded. Make sure it's not too soft or too loud. Make sure that you're in a quiet setting, because you'd be amazed at what the microphone can pick up, even though you think things are quiet. Listen to your pace of voice. Listen to your energy. And when you're satisfied with it, move on to the next chunk. If possible, yeah, use a headset or mic because that will help eliminate a lot of that outside noise. People are mentioning great voices in the chat. Morgan Freeman. I've heard that there's a way to change your GPS tool so it has the voice of Morgan Freeman. Is that true, or is that just an urban legend that you can have Morgan Freeman telling you turn left here, turn right? Someone told me that, but I didn't know if that was true or not because I can't imagine that Morgan Freeman could get paid to do that. And think of all the possibilities of street names and things like that. Or maybe they find a program that imitates his voice. I don't know. Is it legal? Yeah, well, obviously it would need his permission and involvement. But yes, he's got a terrific voice. Proofread your work. Make sure your text is free of errors. So I already caught some errors. Obviously, if we're going to a visually driven strategy, every proofreading error is going to stand out, right? Every misspelling, every missed apostrophe in a contraction, it's all going to stand out. And you don't want that. And that's why I say view, listen to your presentation from the perspective of someone who is not you. Actually, I think I mentioned that in week 1. Not just to catch errors, but just to get a sense of how your presentation is working. Ideally, you should even put yourself in the position of someone who could be a potential employer, right? But the idea is to get outside of your skin, get outside of you, because when you look at your sentences or your slides, everything makes sense to you. Of course it does. You created it. So sometimes you have to step outside of yourself. And if you can do that, then yeah, you'll catch all sorts of things. And that goes for anything, by the way. I tell my English students the same thing. Okay. Did I cover everything? I think so. Question time. Now's the time to ask anything, okay, about the course, about the final presentation, about technical stuff. I've tried to help out. I don't know how many people noticed, but last week on the discussion board, I did give some tips and even included a link on how to record through PowerPoint. I realize PowerPoint isn't the only software people would be using, but usually about half the class uses it. So I gave some tips there about how to record. Yeah, Adrian, I don't know if PowerPoint is terrible. I think PowerPoint actually can be powerful, but you have to make it do what you need it to do, right? So even though I said that I still need to work on the font on that example I gave of the puppy dog, right? This guy here. Yeah, I'm able to make this just because I didn't choose a template. I just chose a blank template, and it started me off with, a generic title slide asking me to enter text for a title, and I just got rid of it. I just highlighted all, deleted, dragged in an image, stretched the image so that it filled the slide, and then I start building. So yeah, I mean, PowerPoint, it's and actually, you know what? If people know how to use it well, it can do a lot. It can actually make very, very professional looking presentations. I'm a bit more comfortable using, yeah, I like iMovie simply because, I don't know, I've mentioned it several times, but you can do the exact same things in PowerPoint through video editing software. So I could drag in this image just as it is here. And then the tools that are contained within iMovie are pretty powerful. I love the recording tools, for instance. And then it has, yeah, sound files. I mean, PowerPoint, I think, has some too, but it has everything from, you could add crickets chirping, or it has some generic background music, so you don't even have to go to something like Westar Music. Remember, I showed that. It's part of the Full Sail library, free music. But yeah, iMovie contains already some music files. Let's see. What are people saying? Adrian says something about Movie Maker. Yeah, for PC, there's PC Movie Maker. There is a program called PC Movie Maker. Bethany says she wishes iMovie was available on the PC. Yeah, iMovie is awesome. I just got a new MacBook, so I don't know. Do I have my PSA from the previous month? I probably do, but I just don't know where it is. Because I could show on the fly how iMovie works. Adrian says, is there a way to look at sound files in PowerPoint along with the slides? I'm not sure what that means exactly. I mean, you have, where is it? I mean, obviously, once the sound is included, you can just click on slideshow and everything should work, right? The slide takes up the whole screen, and whatever accompanying voiceover should play. But if you're talking about recording, yeah, that long post that I wrote for week 3 kind of explains it. Where Yeah, you have this tool here called Record Slideshow. I'm not going to click on it, but I believe this takes you to the area where, yeah, you just start recording the entire thing, not slide by slide, but it literally records your movements in slideshow mode. And it says, right, but if it's one big audio, it's difficult to tell where the slide is going to hit. Yeah, that's where I think I included a website to check out that kind of gives the steps. And I'm sure there are millions of YouTube videos as well. There is a way, I believe, that you can import the audio entirely and then go to this tool here. And that way you can just sit back and while the audio is playing, click when you need to. And that way you get kind of a seamless presentation. Oh, and Maxwell's saying when you add audio to a specific slide, the speaker button appears and you can edit the audio from there too, right? That's where if you want to record slide by slide. And if you bring in audio from somewhere else, it's all the way over here, insert, then audio. And actually, here's also the tool if you want to record your audio right then and there. So if I click record audio, I guess, what do I do? Oh, I guess is that still the import thing? No, that's different from import. Audio from file, audio browser, record audio. Oh, this guy here. So I just have to label it. So let's imagine I'm recording for this slide here. So I say blah, 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 blah. Hi, this is just a test. Let's see how this works. And then when I'm happy with it, I can just stop. And then I think as Maxwell is saying, you click insert and that little button appears here. And yeah, lots of students who aren't very comfortable with the more complicated functions. This is fine, right? Record slide by slide. And then I can either go right into it and click play, or I should be able to click on slideshow. And then as it moves from slide to slide, this will automatically play. Do I have that right, people? I have to admit, I rarely use, actually, I don't think I've ever used the recording functions on PowerPoint. So I'm sort of speaking from partly guesswork, but also from what I've read online. Again, I'm always using a different program. Maxwell said something, you can edit the audio from there. So what does that mean? I don't see any options here to edit, although I hear my voice. You have to edit to make it play automatically. Oh, okay, Jade. And where is that function? Where you make it play automatically? Playback. Wherever that is. I apologize if I'm not a PowerPoint expert because I rarely use it. So, at the top. Okay. You mean up here in the menu? At the top in the center. Play all right here. Okay, I got it. And then I just, oh, okay, cool. I never went to this section before. And you can fade in if you need or fade out. Start when clicked or automatically, right? So, okay, good. I'm glad you showed me that. Yeah, so it's really easy. I mean, anybody can at least record slide by slide, and I'm fine with that. Absolutely fine. Just be careful. I have seen some presentations where literally every slide has like 5 seconds. You know, I mean, you want to be careful. The other danger too. Nobody wants to stare at a single slide for 20 or 30 seconds. 20 seconds might not seem long, but it's an eternity when you're sitting there watching. Or maybe, yeah, actually 20 seconds is kind of long. So yeah, don't be careful not to get caught up in, 5 seconds here, 7 seconds there, because that's very, very short. But yeah, anybody can hopefully at least record slide by slide. And if you want to take a chance on the more advanced options, for example, recording it through some other program, and then importing it, right? So you find your audio file. And then I am pretty sure that you should be able to then go to slideshow, record slideshow, and then sit back and click, because it records the entire, whatever you do here. Actually, let's try it out. All right. So you would think that I should have to start something, but it always begins automatically. But you should be able to sit back and then, yeah, listen to yourself and click as needed to go through it. And then when you end show, I think it prompts you how to save the file. All right. Okay, so it's telling me my presentation is 20 seconds long. Do you want to save it? No. But yeah, play around. And by the way, again, YouTube videos, I bet there are 10 million there on some of these finer points. So I apologize. Any other questions? Yeah, because I don't think I have any iMovie project saves because I haven't used iMovie on this laptop yet. But yeah, iMovie is super cool. Because I wish I still have, and I do have it somewhere, but you're not going to watch me go through every folder trying to find my project from the past. Because who knows where it is. No, that's not it. I do have an iMovie thing saved somewhere. Oh, here it is. iMovie, maybe? Yeah, there's something for my daughter. Oh, gosh. Yeah, there's me. Actually, I think these are the finished versions. Let's see what happens here. Okay, there's me. There's me on screen. And you can do cool things like you can add little bits here. I love that because it's kind of like a documentary. You know how when people are interviewed, they get a little label underneath them. So there's me. I look super red. If I had some ability to, and you can do things like there's piano music playing. So maybe people could hear that, maybe not. And then, yeah, it goes through the presentation. I'm going to speed things up. I created, okay, so here's a good example. There's a lot of text here, right? But this isn't for my script. This is just something for people to look at, okay? That actually correlates to what I'm saying. So even though that looks like text and looks like it's a violation of presentation strategy, not really, because I do want to include some basic data. But it's not like I'm literally just speaking these words out loud. It's a visual aid, okay? I have another visual aid that comes up. Yeah, I found an empty map of the United States, and I shaded in certain states, left this one zebra color because it was kind of an in-between state. And if you go through the rest of it, yeah, you can do cool things within iMovie. Now, this is the finished project, so it would be more useful to show it in iMovie itself. But you can actually go in, for example, and you can double-click on the image and change the number of seconds you want it to appear. I know that in PowerPoint you can do a similar thing, but I don't know because iMovie is so intuitive. I like that because then let's say that this needs to stay up for 10 seconds because the reading that I'm doing matches this for 10 seconds. Then I can go right in the image and change it to 10 seconds. Or if that's too long, I can trim it down to 9 seconds or 8.7 seconds. So that way things keep moving with each part of what I'm saying. And yeah, you get cool things like this where you can have the text kind of move, right? That dramatic kind of quality. And again, PowerPoint actually has a lot of these same functions, but I don't know. Video editing software is just very, very cool. And yeah, this presentation, because I made it very quickly, it's actually functioning a little bit too much like a photo slideshow. But here's another graph that I made. Okay, so again, transform things visually. And I do appear at the beginning and end. So anyway, there's a taste of what iMovie can do. But yeah, it's a really cool program, and I just use like presentation software. And it's got all the tools you need. It's got awesome recording tools. And someone said, I think it's Bethany, that she wished iMovie was for PC. Yeah, iMovie is very user-friendly, but there must be PC video tools that basically function the same way, right? Do they still make Windows Movie Maker? or maybe someone knows about a program that works well for PC. Anyway, I'm sorry. I've actually gone over. I wanted to keep this around half an hour, and it's already 50 minutes have gone by. So yeah, you don't have to stick around. We're done. Actually, I'm gonna stop the recording. But maybe people have been listening have found value in what we've been talking about. I'm stumbling over myself. I'm gonna stop the recording now. Thanks so much for watching, people.